Hello everyone, myself Dhanashree Vittalrao Patil, working as an assistant professor in Computer Science and Engineering Department, Sweris College of Engineering, Pandharpur. In today's lecture, we are going to see the basic idea of big data. So let's start. The content of today's lecture are: what is big data, examples of big data, types of big data, sources of structured data, sources of unstructured data, characteristics of big data challenges, and summary. First, we will see what is meant by the digital data. Digital data is a data that represent other forms of data using specific machine language system that can be interpreted by various technologies. The most fundamental of this system is binary system, which simply stores complex audio, video, or text information in series of binary characters, which are traditionally known as ones and zeros or on and off values. One of the biggest strengths of digital data is all sorts of very complex analog input can be represented with the binary system. Along with smaller microprocessors and larger data storage centers, this model of information capture has helped parties like business and government agencies to explore new fronts of data collection and to represent more impressive simulations through a digital interface. Now, we will see what is big data. Big data is a term that describes the large volume of data which is available in both structured and unstructured format, which includes a business on a day-to-day basis. But it is not the amount of data that is important. What important is what organization is doing with the data that actually matters. Big data can be analyzed for insights that lead to better decisions and strategic business moves. In short, such data is so large and complex that none of the traditional data management tools are able to store it or to process it efficiently. Here, these are some examples of big data. First, it is a New York Stock Exchange which generates about 1 terabytes of new trade data per day. The next well-known example is social media. The statistics shows that 500 plus terabytes of new data get ingested into the databases of social media site as like Facebook every day. This data is mainly generated in terms of photo and video uploads, message exchanges, putting comments, and so on. These are only few examples of data generation from which we can understand how big data is generated every day. Next, this is the picture of data growth over the years. We are in the era of 2019 and you can see up to 2030 what will be the data growth. It is really huge of amount of data which we needs to take care of. Now, next we'll see types of big data. Their big data is generally divided into three types: structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. We will see one by one. Structured data. Any data that can be stored, accessed, and processed in the form of fixed format is called as a structured data. Examples of structured data include numbers, dates, and groups of words and numbers called as a string. Most experts agree that this kind of data accounts for about 20% of data that is out there. Structured data is the data that you are probably used to dealing with. It is usually stored in a database. This is one example of a structured data where we are having employee ID, name, gender, department, salary. Each entry in this table is having a specified format. For example, employee ID is having integer values. Employee name are having only string values or the character values. Gender is having all the character values. Department all the characters value, and salary it is available in the numbers or the integer values. It means that the format of every column and every row is fixed. Also, if you want to access this particular value from the table, then we have to use a query. For example, structured query language. It means that in a structured data, the format of storing the data as well as accessing the data is fixed. Next type of data is a unstructured data. Unstructured data is a data that does not follow a specified format. If we say that 20% of data is available in enterprises, which is in a structured format, then other remaining 80% is available data is in a unstructured format. Unstructured data is really most of the data that you will encounter. Any data with unknown form or structure is classified as an unstructured data. Here is one example of an unstructured data. This shows the output which is written by the Google search. Whenever we search anything on a Google, we'll get the combination of the data. It means that it gives some of the links, also it gives some of the images, some of the hyperlinks, and so on. All this data comes under the pattern of unstructured data. The third example of a data is a semi-structured data. Semi-structured data is a kind of data that falls between structured and unstructured format. Semi-structured data does not necessarily conform to a fixed schema, that is structure, but may be self-describing and may have simple label value pairs. In short, semi-structured data can contain both the forms of data. We can see semi-structured data as a structured in form, but it is actually not defined with, for example, table definition in relational database management system. This is one example of a semi-structured data where the name, then sex and age of a person gets stored in one XML file. It means that the format is not fixed and such data is called as a semi-structured data. Then we will see the sources of structured data. Sources of data are divided basically in two broad categories. First, machine generated data, and second, human generated data. Machine generated data generally refers to the data that is created by machine without human intervention, and human generated data is a data that is generated by the humans in interaction with the computers. Some experts also argue that a third category exists, which is hybrid between machine and human. But in this video lecture, we are going to concentrate only machine generated and human generated data. Let's see some of the examples of machine generated structured data. First example, sensor data. Sensors include, for example, radio frequency IDs, that is RFID tags, the smart meters, medical devices, and GPS data. Let's see one example of RFID. RFID is rapidly becoming a popular technology. It uses tiny computer chips to track the items at a distance. An example of this tracking containers of a produce from one location to another. When information is transmitted from the receiver, it can go into a server and then can be analyzed. Companies are interested in this for supply chain management and inventory control. Another example of sensor data is smartphones that contains sensors like GPS that can be used to understand customers' behavior in new ways. The second example of structured data is weblog data. When servers or applications, networks, and so on operate, they capture all kinds of data about their activity. This can amount to huge volume of data that can be useful, for example, to deal with service level agreement or to predict security breaches. Next example is a point of sale data. When the cashier swipes the barcode of any product that you are purchasing, all data all that data associated with the product is generated in a specified format. Just think of all the products across all the people who purchase them, and you can understand how big this set can be. The next source is financial data. Lots of financial systems are now programmatic. They are operated based on predefined rules that automate the processes. Stock trading data is good example of this. It contains structured data such as the company symbol and dollar values. Some of this data is machine generated and some is human generated. Next example are the sources of structured data generated by the human. The first example is input data. This is any piece of data that a human might input into a computer, such as name, age, income, non-free form survey responses, and so on. This data can be useful to understand basic customer behavior. The second source can be click stream data. Data is generated every time you click on a link on a website. This data can be analyzed to determine customer behavior and buying patterns. The next example for structured data generated by human is gaming related data. Every move you make in a game can be recorded. This can be useful in understanding how end users move through a gaming portfolio. Next, we will see the sources of unstructured data. Again, the sources are divided into machine generated and human generated unstructured data. The definitions we have already seen. Machine generated unstructured data can include first, satellite images. This includes weather data or the data that government captures in its satellite surveillance imagery. Just think about Google Earth and you will get the picture. The second example is scientific data. This includes semantic imagery, atmospheric data, and high energy physics. The next source is photographs and videos. This include security, surveillance, and traffic videos. Then radar or sonar data. This includes vehicular, meteorological, and oceanographic semantic profiles. Next, we will see human generated unstructured data. The first example for this is text internal to your company. Think of all the text within documents, logs, surveys, results, and emails. Enterprise information actually represent a large percentage of the text information in the world today. The second source of unstructured data is social media data. This data is generated from the social media platforms such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Flickr, and so on. The next source is mobile data. This includes the data that such as text messages and location information. The next source is website content. This comes from any site delivering unstructured content as like YouTube, Flickr, or Instagram. These are the sources of unstructured data. Next, we will see the characteristics of big data. These characteristics are also called as the 3 V's of big data. It is broadly divided in 3 categories: volume, variety, and velocity. Volume is nothing but how much data is available in a particular system. As the name suggests, big data is related to a size which is enormous. Size of data plays a very crucial role in determining value out of data. Also, whether particular data can actually be considered as a big data or not is dependent upon the volume of data. Hence, volume is one character which needs to be considered while dealing with the big data. The next characteristics is variety, which is nothing but various types of data. These types can include structure, unstructured, as well as semi-structured data. Variety refers to the heterogeneous sources and the nature of data. During earlier days, spreadsheets and databases were the only sources of data considered by most of the application. Nowadays, data in the form of emails, photos, videos, monitoring devices, PDFs, audio, etc. are also being considered in the analysis applications. This variety of unstructured data poses certain issues for the storage, mining, and analyzing the data. The third characteristics is velocity, which is nothing but how fast the data can be processed. The term velocity refers to the speed of generation and processing of a data. How fast the data is generated and processed to meet the demands determines real potential in the data. Big data velocity deals with the speed at which data flows in the form of sources like business processes, application logs, networks, and social media sites. the flow of data is massive and continuous. Next, we will see what are the big data challenges. Big data technologies are maturing to the point in which more organizations are prepared to pilot and adopt the big data as a core component of information management and analytics infrastructure. As big data wends its inextricable way into the enterprise, information technology and business sponsors alike will bump up against a number of challenges that must be addressed before any big data program can be successful. There are there are five basic challenges of a big data. First, uncertainty of data management landscape. There are many competing technologies, and within each technical era, there are numerous revise. Our first challenge is making the best choice while not introducing additional unknowns and risk to big data adoption. The second challenge include the big data talent gap. The excitement around the big data application seems to imply that there is a broad community of experts available to help the implementation. However, this is not yet the case, and the talent gap poses our second challenge. The third challenge, getting data into the big data platform. The scale and variety of data to be absorbed into big data environment can overcome the unprepared data practice, making data accessibility and integration our third challenge. The next challenge is synchronization across the data sources. As more data sets from diverse sources are incorporated into an analytical platform, the potential for time lags to impact the data currency and consistency becomes our fourth challenge. The last challenge is getting useful information out of the big data platform. Lastly, using big data for different purposes ranging from storage augmentation to enabling high performance analytics is impeded if the information cannot be provided back within the other components of the enterprise information architecture, which makes big data syndication our fifth challenge. Now we will see what we have learned from this video. First, big data is a term which is used to describe huge amount of data which is available in all types of the data, which is nothing but structured, unstructured and semi-structured. Next, every day large amount of data is generated from various sources, and this data is in terabytes, petabytes, zettabytes or exabytes also. Three types of data: structured data, unstructured and semi-structured. Sources of structured and unstructured data. Then we have seen characteristics of big data, which are also known as 3 V's of big data. Lastly, we have seen the challenges of big data which we need to deal with. Thank you.